Ethan stepped cautiously into the bustling alien station, his eyes darting from one strange creature to another. Everywhere he looked, life teemed in impossible forms: tentacle-legged merchants haggling over iridescent goods, floating jelly-like beings wobbling elegantly through corridors, and a group of insectoid diplomats performing a synchronized greeting that looked more like a dance than etiquette. He clutched his small duffel bag tightly, trying to ignore the mixture of awe and mild panic twisting his stomach. Renting a room here had seemed like a simple adventure at first, a chance to experience interstellar life firsthand. But the moment he passed through the airlock and felt the low hum of the station's energy core vibrating through his bones, he realized he might have underestimated the complexity of alien living arrangements. He finally found the small door marked with a glowing symbol that he assumed represented his room. The panel beside it beeped insistently as he scanned the access card, and the door hissed open to reveal an interior that was unusual, to say the least. Furniture seemed to float slightly above the floor, shimmering softly, and the walls were covered with shifting colors that pulsed in rhythm with some internal rhythm of the station. Ethan stepped inside cautiously, taking care not to knock over a hovering lamp shaped like a translucent flower, and immediately sensed he was not alone. A figure emerged from the shadows, her skin glowing faintly with a soft bioluminescence that painted the room in gentle shades of purple and teal. Her hair, or what could be called hair, was a series of flexible, glowing appendages that swayed like serpents, each tipped with a faint luminescent light. Her eyes, large and multifaceted, studied him with a mixture of suspicion and amusement. She raised one delicate hand, displaying 3 elongated fingers tipped with translucent claws, and spoke in a voice that was musical and commanding at once. "Don't you dare pull it out, I'll scream." Ethan froze, not sure whether to apologize or laugh. The words hung in the air like a warning bell, and he quickly glanced around, realizing he had no idea what she was talking about. "You what?" he asked cautiously, his voice barely above a whisper. He glanced at a strange contraption tucked in the corner of the room. It looked like a cross between a chair, a mechanical harness, and a collection of glowing tubes. Tentative curiosity took hold despite the warning. He edged closer to examine it, trying to hide the nervous excitement in his posture. The device?" The alien woman's expression, which had hovered between annoyance and wariness, shifted sharply. She waved her hands in a dramatic flourish, emphasizing the seriousness of her warning. "Do not touch it. I mean it. Not a single finger, not even a glance. The ritual restraint device is sensitive. It responds to unauthorized interaction with." She gestured at the device in a way that made Ethan's heart rate spike. "Alarms. Loud, very loud alarms. And the neighbors. They do not understand human foolishness." Ethan swallowed hard, but his curiosity had already taken root. He leaned closer, squinting at the complex arrangement of lights, levers, and glowing conduits, trying to decipher how it worked. "It looks mechanical," he ventured. "Like a chair or something you sit in?" Her eyes narrowed in what he assumed was the alien equivalent of glaring. "It is not something to sit in. It is a sacred object, a test of restraint and trust. You human types are so blunt. If you even think of pulling it out, I will scream, and the station will know immediately. Do you understand?" "I think so," Ethan stammered. His hand twitched almost involuntarily toward the glowing tube. The device pulsed faintly, as if aware of his presence. Curiosity battled with caution, and before he realized it, his fingers brushed the smooth, warm surface. A shrill alarm pierced the air, echoing through the corridors of the station. Ethan yelped and jerked his hand back, but it was too late. The alien woman's scream joined the mechanical wail, high-pitched and musical, vibrating through Ethan's bones. He spun around in panic as the door slid open and several neighboring aliens peeked in, their wide eyes glinting with judgmental curiosity. One floating creature tilted its gelatinous form, another adjusted the metallic hat on its head in disbelief, and a small insectoid being clicked its mandibles audibly. Ethan's face turned red, or at least as red as a human could appear under fluorescent alien lighting, as he realized he had just violated every unspoken social rule on the station. "Lyra," He had learned her name through a brief, formal introduction earlier. Rushed to silence the device, her tentacle-like hair whipping dramatically in agitation. "You fool," she hissed, though the corners of her mouth threatened a smile. "Do you understand what you have done? Do you realize how embarrassing this is? For both of us." I'm sorry," Ethan blurted, fumbling to straighten himself and avoid looking at her glowing eyes too directly. "I didn't mean to. I didn't know it was." He gestured vaguely at the device, the room, the station itself. She waved him off, but there was a sparkle of amusement beneath her reprimand. "I know, human. That is why I must scream. You cannot help yourself, can you?" Ethan felt a rush of warmth, not entirely from embarrassment, at the glint of humor in her expression. Despite the chaos, he found her utterly captivating. Her voice, her movements, the strange rhythm of her glowing hair, he couldn't help but be drawn to her. At the same time, he remained painfully aware that his clumsiness had already caused a minor scandal among the alien neighbors. In a desperate bid to regain composure, Ethan tried to back away from the device, but his foot caught on a floating stool, sending him sliding across the slick floor. He collided softly with the alien furniture, a glowing object tipping over and releasing a faint mist that coated his arm. Lyra's eyes widened, and a second, smaller alarm beeped insistently from the device. She groaned, tugging him upright by the shoulder. "You see," she said, shaking her head in exasperation and amusement simultaneously. "This is exactly why humans cannot be trusted around delicate traditions. And yet you are human, so I suppose I must tolerate your foolishness. For now." Ethan could only nod, cheeks burning, trying to find words that wouldn't make things worse. I'll be more careful. I swear. I'm good at following rules." Lyra's lips twitched in what might have been the alien equivalent of a smirk. "We shall see, human. We shall see. Now, try not to break anything else. And please, do not, under any circumstances, touch the device again. Or I will scream. And I will not be gentle." Despite her warning, Ethan's curiosity lingered, a mixture of fear and fascination pulling him toward her and the strange glowing contraption. And as the neighbor's eyes remained fixed on the scene and the hum of the station continued around them, he realized with a mix of dread and excitement that living with this alien roommate would be far more complicated and far more thrilling than he had ever imagined. Ethan thought he could recover from the earlier disaster, but the moment he tried to settle in, it became painfully clear that the station had not forgotten his transgression. From outside the door, whispers floated through the corridor, a cacophony of alien clicks, chirps, and melodic tones that sounded like a gossip network broadcast directly into his brain. He peeked nervously at the glowing device, now silent, but still radiating an almost imperceptible hum, as if daring him to touch it again. Lyra, her tentacle-like hair still quivering from the alarm, fixed him with a look that was equal parts exasperation and amusement. Ethan wanted to apologize again, but words felt useless. He had already demonstrated his spectacular talent for fumbling, and any further attempts would likely make things worse. Determined to redeem himself, Ethan tried to follow Lyra's instructions, mimicking the gestures she used to interact with the station's floating furniture. Every movement he made, however, seemed to produce the opposite effect of what was intended. He stretched his arms in what he hoped was a respectful bow, only to knock a small levitating orb into a corner, where it bounced off a wall and emitted a piercing chirp. Lyra winced, though a faint smile tugged at her lips, betraying her amusement. She muttered something in her musical tongue that Ethan didn't understand, but the tone conveyed a mixture of reproach and laughter. The crowd outside had grown. Small, gelatinous beings peeked around the corners, their translucent forms revealing internal pulsations that seemed to mirror their curiosity. A group of insectoid aliens pressed their mandibles together, as if debating the severity of his faux pas. Ethan's heart pounded as he realized the entire neighborhood was observing his every move. He tried to focus on Lyra, attempting to draw her attention away from the crowd, but every step seemed to generate another awkward mistake. Lyra sighed dramatically, pointing to the device as if to say, Don't you dare touch it again. Ethan nodded furiously, vowing to respect her wishes. But as he backed away, his foot snagged on a hovering cable, sending him stumbling forward. In a reflexive panic, he extended his hands to catch himself, inadvertently brushing against the glowing tubes of the ritual restraint device. A sudden pulse of light erupted from the contraption, illuminating the room and casting moving shadows across Lyra's glowing form. The device emitted a soft, vibrating hum that quickly escalated into an alarmed wail. Lyra's eyes widened, her usual composure collapsing into a mixture of horror and incredulous laughter. "I warned you," she cried, her voice musical and high-pitched as she activated a series of control panels in rapid succession. The room filled with a swirling mist that smelled faintly sweet and tickled Ethan's skin. Objects floated and wobbled, defying gravity in chaotic patterns. Ethan flailed, attempting to avoid the floating debris, but in doing so, he exposed more of himself than he intended, the glowing mist highlighting the contours of his human form. The alien neighbors outside pressed closer, their expressions ranging from curiosity to shock, some producing sounds that Ethan interpreted as laughter. He twisted awkwardly, trying to shield himself while simultaneously attempting to assist Lyra in calming the device. Each movement seemed to provoke another unpredictable reaction. A levitating chair zipped across the room, narrowly missing him, and a small orb of iridescent energy bounced off his shoulder, exploding into harmless sparks. Lyra scolded him, though each reprimand was punctuated by a laugh that made it impossible for Ethan to take the situation entirely seriously. Amid the chaos, Ethan noticed how Lyra moved with a fluid grace, her tentacle hair weaving around obstacles effortlessly. Despite her annoyance, she occasionally brushed against him, whether to steady him or redirect a floating object. Each accidental touch sent jolts of warmth through him, a mixture of embarrassment and undeniable attraction. He could feel the absurd tension building between them, a complicated blend of panic, desire, and shared laughter that seemed to hang in the mist-filled air like a tangible force. In a moment of flustered inspiration, Ethan grabbed a floating tool from a nearby workstation, waving it experimentally to guide a bouncing orb back toward the device. Lyra's eyes narrowed suspiciously, but she allowed it, her trust fragile but growing. Somehow, through a combination of luck, quick thinking, and sheer human clumsiness, the orb returned to its intended place, and the device's alarm faded, leaving only a faint glow. Ethan collapsed against the wall, panting and dripping from the mist, his shirt sticking uncomfortably to his chest. Lyra approached him cautiously, her expression a mix of exasperation and amusement. She reached out a glowing hand to adjust his damp hair, brushing it aside with a tenderness that made Ethan's heart race. "You are impossible," she said, her tone teasing. "And yet not entirely without merit. You have a human's resilience, I will give you that, and a certain audacity that I find perplexing." Ethan chuckled nervously, wiping mist from his face, and attempted to make a joke. "Audacity and clumsiness. That's me in a nutshell." His words elicited a melodic laugh from Lyra, a sound that made the hair along his arms stand on end. She shook her head, the luminescent strands of her hair weaving around them like playful tendrils, and muttered, "We shall see how long this audacity lasts, human." The neighbors outside, having witnessed the spectacle, seemed to lose interest slowly, drifting away with whispered murmurs. Ethan breathed a sigh of relief, though the sticky mist and lingering embarrassment clung to him. He realized that surviving in this alien household would require far more than just caution. It would demand improvisation, charm, and a willingness to endure the unpredictable chaos that came with living alongside Lyra. By the time he finally settled onto a hovering chair, soaked, exhausted, and still glowing faintly from residual light, Ethan had an unsettling but thrilling realization. Every mistake, every accidental exposure, every chaotic mishap was drawing him closer to her. Lyra, hovering nearby with an amused smirk and glowing eyes, regarded him with a mix of suspicion and curiosity, the subtle play of light across her bioluminescent skin accentuating her alien allure. For the first time since arriving, Ethan felt that perhaps this chaotic, Unpredictable life was exactly where he was supposed to be. Even amidst the embarrassment, the alarms, and the strange alien customs, a spark of connection had formed, and Ethan knew that tomorrow would bring another round of absurd challenges, and likely, another wave of laughter, chaos, and electric tension between them. The thought made his chest tighten with anticipation, his human instincts both terrified and thrilled by the alien woman and her bewildering, intoxicating world. Ethan barely had a moment to catch his breath before the next round of chaos began. The ritual restraint device, still humming faintly from his earlier mishap, seemed to have a mind of its own. He glanced nervously at Lyra, who stood with her tentacle-like hair swaying like a halo of glowing serpents, her expression a mix of exasperation and barely contained amusement. "We need to fix this," she said, her voice calm yet tinged with urgency. Ethan nodded, already feeling a knot of panic twist in his stomach. Every time he tried to think clearly, a glowing wire would pulse under his fingers, or a floating orb would bob dangerously close to his head. He reached toward the device, carefully trying to avoid touching any sensitive areas. Lyra's eyes followed him sharply, and she let out a warning hiss that made him flinch. "Gentle. Every movement must be precise. Do not make it worse." He nodded again, muttering, "I got this. I'm careful. Totally careful." Yet the moment the words left his mouth, his sleeve brushed a lever, sending a small stream of iridescent liquid spraying across the floor. Ethan yelped, slipping slightly on the slick surface, and barely managed to grab onto one of Lyra's tentacles for balance. She gasped, pulling him upright and pinning him against the glowing wall to steady him. Their bodies pressed together briefly, and Ethan felt a jolt of warmth run through him, part fear, part attraction. Lyra's glowing appendages wrapped gently around his arm, stabilizing him, and she muttered something that sounded suspiciously like a reprimand, though the musical cadence carried an unmistakable undertone of amusement. Ethan's face flushed, and he stammered an apology, his human awkwardness fully exposed. As they worked together to reset the device, each step seemed to trigger more absurdity. A floating panel flipped open unexpectedly, releasing a puff of glittering alien dust that coated them both. Ethan sneezed, sending a spray of sparkling particles across Lyra's glowing skin. She laughed, the sound melodic and high-pitched, and swatted at him with one tentacle, accidentally grazing his shoulder in a touch that made him shiver. "You are hopeless," she said, though her tone betrayed her growing fondness. He tried to redirect a floating orb back into the device, but misjudged its trajectory, and it bounced off his chest, rolling between them. Both of them lunged to catch it simultaneously, resulting in a clumsy tangle of limbs. Ethan ended up sprawled against her, his face brushing against her bioluminescent skin, and he froze, unsure whether to pull away or just stay. Lyra's eyes widened, her own tentacles wrapping gently around him to steady the orb and prevent further chaos. A blush, if that was what humans could call it, spotted his cheeks, and he realized that despite the absurdity, the proximity felt electric. "Focus," Lyra said, trying to regain composure, though the slight tremor in her voice betrayed her embarrassment. "We cannot let the device trigger another alarm." Ethan nodded, forcing himself to concentrate, but every movement of her glowing hair or soft, iridescent appendages distracted him. He caught himself staring more than he should, captivated by the way the light played across her skin, highlighting contours that were entirely alien but stunning in their symmetry. The device emitted another hum, louder this time, and Ethan panicked. He reached out, his fingers brushing a sensitive control panel, and immediately a stream of colored mist shot across the room. Lyra yelped and flailed, slipping slightly, and Ethan reached out instinctively to grab her. In doing so, he tripped over a floating stool, dragging her with him in a heap of limbs and glowing tendrils. The mist settled around them, shimmering in the lights, and for a moment they lay there tangled, breathing heavily, trying to disentangle themselves. Their accidental closeness forced them to communicate differently, hand signals, gentle nudges, and whispered instructions. Ethan found himself watching her every movement, not just for guidance, but because he couldn't look away. She adjusted his posture, guided his hands, and occasionally let her tentacles brush against him just enough to send shivers through him. He caught himself imagining how it would feel if their accidental touches weren't just about stabilizing objects, but about something more. Amid the chaos, Ethan had a spark of human ingenuity. He grabbed a loose panel from a workstation and, using it as a lever, managed to nudge the floating orb back into position. Lyra's eyes widened in surprise, then softened as she realized his improvisation had worked. "Impressive," she murmured, stepping closer to study him as the device finally quieted. Ethan's chest heaved, his body still sticky with the lingering mist, and he felt a surge of pride tempered by embarrassment. They collapsed together against a glowing wall, dripping, exhausted, and coated in glittering alien dust. Both of them laughed, a shared sound that broke through the tension, filling the room with warmth. Lyra's hands brushed against his shoulders in a teasing gesture, and Ethan felt an undeniable spark of connection. Their laughter faded into a comfortable silence, the kind that comes after surviving chaos side by side. For the first time, Ethan realized that despite the alarms, the awkward nudity, and the absurdity of alien customs, he genuinely liked this strange, frustrating, captivating alien woman. Lyra tilted her head, studying him with an expression that was equal parts exasperation and fondness. "Perhaps," she said softly, "humans are not completely intolerable after all. Perhaps there is value in your audacity." Ethan grinned, feeling the tension between them ease slightly, though the thrill of near disaster lingered. He realized that surviving in her world wasn't just about following rules. It was about trust, adaptability, and a willingness to embrace the chaos. As they sat there, side by side, tangled in alien dust and residual mist, Ethan understood that their connection was more than accidental proximity. It was the result of shared laughter, mutual embarrassment, and the slow recognition of each other's quirks. Lyra's hand brushed his in a deliberate, gentle gesture, and he felt the electricity hum between them, subtle but unmistakable. For all the chaos and mishaps, he knew this was the moment where friendship, attraction, and perhaps even love began to take root, forged in the glow of an alien room that neither of them would ever forget. The room finally settled into a tentative calm. The ritual restraint device, now quiet and dimly glowing, hummed faintly like it was catching its breath after the chaos. Ethan slumped against the floating wall, sticky mist still clinging to his clothes and hair, feeling a mix of exhaustion and relief. Lyra hovered nearby, her glowing hair tentacles curling gently around her as she watched him with that same blend of exasperation and amusement that had been constant since his arrival. Outside, the alien neighbors had slowly dispersed, though Ethan could sense their lingering curiosity like a static charge in the air. He attempted a weak smile, brushing glittering alien dust from his sleeve. "Well, that was something," he said, his voice catching slightly as he glanced at Lyra. "I think I might deserve some kind of medal for surviving your rituals." Lyra's mouth curved into what he could only describe as a smirk. "Survival is relative, human," she replied, her voice melodic yet teasing. "But you have spirit, and a knack for disaster that is both impressive and alarming." She floated closer, the bioluminescent tips of her hair brushing his shoulder as she passed. Ethan's heart raced, and he had to consciously remind himself to breathe. The touch was electric, yet casual, almost as if she hadn't realized the effect she was having. Ethan rose slowly to his feet, careful not to stumble over any lingering floating debris. He looked around the room, surveying the mess. Iridescent splashes on the walls, small objects hovering in awkward positions, and a faint scent of alien floral mist lingering in the air. "I should probably clean this up," he said, though he had no idea where to begin. Lyra raised an amused eyebrow, the glow of her skin casting playful patterns across the room. "You may attempt," she said lightly, "but do not touch the device again, or I will scream. And this time, the neighbors might not be so forgiving." Ethan chuckled nervously, nodding. "Got it. I think I've learned my lesson mostly." His words earned a melodic laugh from her, a sound that made him feel unaccountably warm inside. It was a laugh that could have belonged to the station itself, playful, teasing, and full of light. Despite the lingering embarrassment and the sticky coating of mist, a comfortable rhythm began to form between them. Ethan found himself watching her movements, fascinated not just by her alien grace, but by the subtle ways she adjusted to him, guided him, and even teased him without ever seeming unkind. Every brush of her glowing hair, every tilt of her head, sent small shocks of anticipation through him, and he realized that the chaos of the morning had somehow forged a connection stronger than either of them had expected. As Ethan carefully began to collect floating objects, Lyra drifted beside him, guiding his hands here and there. Their touches were accidental, then deliberate, teasingly lingering in ways that made Ethan blush fiercely. He stumbled over a small panel, and she caught it with one tentacle, her appendage brushing against his wrist in a way that sent a jolt through him. "Careful, human," she said softly, her voice low and intimate. "Your ingenuity is admirable, but your coordination a less so." Ethan grinned, feeling the tension ease slightly as he realized her scolding was not meant to chastise but to engage, playful, teasing, and affectionate. He laughed, brushing the dust off his shoulder. "I guess I'm learning the hard way. But you have to admit, this was kind of fun in a ridiculous, chaotic way." Lyra tilted her head, studying him, her eyes glowing faintly. "Fun, perhaps. Entertaining, certainly. And illuminating. It reveals much about human character, Ethan. Your resilience, your boldness, and your unexpected charm." Ethan felt his face heat up, though he tried to hide it. "Charm, huh? I'll take it. Though I think most humans would have fled in terror by now." Lyra's laughter filled the space again, musical and warm. "Humans are foolish, but occasionally admirably so." The device emitted a small pulse, harmless this time, sending a shimmer across the walls. Ethan instinctively reached to study it, and Lyra moved with him, their hands brushing. Neither pulled away. Instead, they froze for a moment, the glow of the room casting them both in soft, flickering light. The tension between them was no longer fear or chaos. It was playful, intimate, and undeniably charged. Outside the room, the hum of the station continued, alien voices and distant machinery providing a soundtrack to their quiet moment. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding and met Lyra's gaze. Her smile was soft now, genuine and warm, a stark contrast to the earlier flustered exasperation. "Perhaps," she said, voice low, "humans are worth enduring a little chaos for." Ethan's grin widened. "I'd say you're worth a lot more than that." She tilted her head, considering him, and for the first time, her glowing tentacles brushed against him not to steady or correct, but as a gentle, lingering caress. His heart thudded in his chest, a mix of embarrassment, thrill, and something deeper that neither the alarms nor the alien chaos could drown out. They sat together, side by side on a floating bench-like structure, both sticky and disheveled, bathed in the soft glow of the room. Words weren't necessary. They had survived the rituals, the accidents, the laughter, and the embarrassment. What remained was a shared connection forged through chaos, laughter, and inadvertent intimacy. Ethan realized that the mess, the absurdity, and the alien quirks had somehow brought them closer than polite conversation ever could. A final pulse from the device sent a harmless spark across the floor, making both of them jump and laugh. Lyra's eyes twinkled. "Perhaps tomorrow will be less chaotic," she said, her voice teasing, though her smile suggested she doubted it. Ethan chuckled. "Less chaotic? Probably not. But definitely more fun with you." They settled into a comfortable silence, the glow from her skin illuminating both of them in soft, flickering light. The absurdity, the embarrassment, and the chaos had all led to this, a shared, intimate moment that promised more laughter, more misadventures, and the slow, undeniable growth of something human and alien alike. Connection, attraction, and perhaps the start of love. For Ethan, The sticky mist, the alarms, and the glowing chaos of the alien station suddenly didn't seem so intimidating. With Lyra beside him, every misstep and blunder became an adventure, every touch a spark, and every laugh a bridge between worlds. And as they shared a lingering look, the station humming softly around them, Ethan realized that this alien roommate and her unpredictable, intoxicating rituals was exactly the kind of chaos he had secretly been hoping to find.